Disclaimer: this video is of humorous nature only. The author does not seek to insult or humiliate anyone. The video may contain profanity. People under the age of 16 should refrain from watching this video. Story 1. I worked at a marine mammal rescue center in Alaska. It could be really fun and rewarding, but the work itself was anything but glamorous. During the training, we were told emphatically, when approaching a rehabbing sea lion from the front, you have to hold your breath until you can get to the side. Their breath will knock you out. We laughed, but the teacher said, "Oh, I'm not kidding." Should have taken it more seriously my first week there. I approach a sea lion we're rehabbing, and when I'm about 5 feet away, it opened its mouth wider than my head and let out a 4-second-long belch, as sea lions are known to do. I immediately fell to the ground puking. Couldn't think straight for 2 minutes and felt nauseous most of the rest of the day and had to go home early. Still feel sick thinking of it. Story 2. Pet sitting for a pet fox. I pet sit for a living and came across an opportunity to get 10x the money one weekend by pet sitting for a pet fox while the owners were on vacation. It was super cute, but now it's a year later, and my car still smells like fox. No idea how that's even possible. The fox was never in the car. Can't take friends on rides anymore. Story 3. When I was 14, maybe? I went to use the bathroom like any normal time. I pissed, wiped, flushed, washed my hands, and walked back to my room. Now this toilet has a habit of making that noise toilets make after you flush, but for about 2 minutes longer than normal. Nothing ever happened, till that night when my brother came running into my room telling me the whole living room and hallways was flooding and the toilet is overflowing and won't stop running. I walked out my room to see my mom freaking out. Now, for some context, my family is lower class, middle class. My parents worked and they owned the home, so we were lucky to have a roof to live under. But we never had extra money to go out to eat or go to movies or even vacations. We always ate very basic and easy meals so my parents could afford the home and bills. I never even left my home state till I was 16, almost 17. My father also has a massive spending problem, which leaves money very tight for my family. This was almost 9 years ago, mind you. Seeing the way my mom was reacting, seeing her crying and on her knees and begging for life to just stop being crafty for her, left a permanent image in my head. The only other time I've seen my mom cry like this was Christmas time, December 23, 2023. And that was being my dad left a sauced note and took off, and we thought he killed himself for hours. My mother was broken, and that moment will forever haunt me. He's still alive, found him in time. Now the whole house was soaked and flooding, and my mom was freaking trying to turn the water off and get the shop vac to suck up the water and crying and saying how she doesn't know where she's going to get the money to fix this and trying to figure out what bills she can push to pay for this. Yeah, I never told her or fessed up to it. They think it was older brother, and I let them think it. It still haunts me and makes me want to cry thinking of her reaction to it. Story 4. Talked a little about this in other posts, but my decision to stay and try to help my mom. After my grandmother died, my cousin and I were set to inherit a house, but we gave our halves to her. At the time, I was living in Europe, in Budapest, for 3.5 years. I was so close to residency. Then I saw she was having trouble financially when I came to visit for a family reunion. I had a return ticket, my jobs, but I ducking stayed because I felt bad. We set agreements that I would pay half of everything and then later give her a bit extra so I can save to help my fiancé come here. That in order for this to work, I'd like to live in the house so I'm not paying rent somewhere plus half of the bills. And I wanted to be around the dogs, which I also take care of. Then she took advantage of this by buying more things and investing in the house, which she agreed to sell because she can't afford it without someone helping her. Immediately after I didn't have a way back, things changed. She hated my now ex-partner and would demand time and time again we break up, even though she was nothing but kind to her. She decided she wanted more money immediately. She has threatened to kill herself by putting a gun to her head, pushed me, hit me, tried to choke me, because she would start conflicts and not let me walk away, or didn't like what I had to say. She's tried to cut me off from other parts of the family that know and want to help me. I lost everything because of this decision, but I'm slowly rebuilding, and I think next year I'll be able to find my way back. Maybe to Prague this time, or back to Budapest. I don't know. I just want the life I had back, and this time she won't get to be a part of it. Story 5. 2 years ago, the week of my 30th birthday. I had hooked up sporadically in my 20s and wanted to use my 30s to be a more confident guy. Failed my first test right out the gate when I let a former friend convince me to go to a bar where college kids go. He was 2 years older than me and was really weird about dating women his own age. I start drunkenly dancing, and 2 short girls, one blonde and one Indian, a personal dream combo, smile at me. I try to get my friend to join me so we can talk to them, but he wasn't drunk enough and was holding out for a girl he claimed looked like Kendall Jenner. They even booty bumped me at certain points, but I had no ducking idea what to say and was overthinking until they ended up dancing with other guys. But that's not the big mistake. In my shame over my failure to approach women who had clear interest in me, I told my friend we should go to a nearby strip club. After some time in there, I'm flagged down by a girl who offers everything. I'm drunk, horny, and still had some stimulus money left over. In short, this girl tricked my stupid drunk ass into forking over too much money for a mediocre blowjob. Ended up having an overdraft in my account for the next couple days. Yes, that's right, my stimmy money was depleted after that. And she still invited me to meet her for actual intimate. I obviously declined, but I am still haunted by my absolute stupidity before and after this whole thing. And I no longer talk to that friend who claimed he had a threesome in the club. Fabulous start to my 30s, and it hasn't gotten a lot better since then. Story 6. Was teaching undergraduate students, and a now ex-friend asked me to offer my students summer work producing this new thing called NFTs. I wasn't too familiar with what they were back then. This was about 5 years ago. And from what I read, it sounded like a kind of dumb concept, but easy summer work and cash for my students. So I pitched it to them. It turned out that the guy running the company was a notorious scammer who had already spent time in jail, and I had just exposed my students to his latest bullcrap. I'm not the kind to overreact normally, but I was extremely proud of that job and the reputation that came with it. I thought it was the end of my career and any chance of ever being trusted by students again, so I panicked, tried, and thankfully failed to kill myself, and subsequently fell into a severe alcohol abuse problem and had to resign. I was extremely fortunate in that my bosses and team were mega supportive of me and looked out for me every step of the way. I couldn't have asked for more help than they gave me. It wasn't the end of my career at all, but I couldn't face teaching anymore after that. I'm now long-term sober and still work in academia, and I'm so grateful to be back on my feet and didn't throw it all away over a momentary crisis. Story 7. I let my friend keep me silent. I was friends with this girl from a young age. I was shy and didn't talk much. When we were like 13, 16, I went down the rock metal music horror movie loving ooky spooky route, while she and the other girl in our group kept on the regular girly girl route. She was going through a boy-obsessed era and constantly would be looking to meet boys and have them fawn over her. I hindered that being 5'11" at the time and head-to-toe black. I looked like the love of my life at that stage. Michael Paget from Bullet for My Valentine. When I was around and we were hanging around with lads, they would start conversations with me, and the minute I'd stray into my spooky crap, I'd get interrupted, or eventually it just became a look she would give me and I'd shut up or stop talking about spooky stuff or any hobbies I had. A group of guys we hung out with only learned I play drums because one of them walked into the waiting room of the center that did music lessons later than usual, and I was there with my sticks. They only knew I was a massive Darren Shan fan because one of them mentioned the film was coming out, and my friend wasn't around to stop my brain from spitting out a detail about the books. Because of that, even now at 29, I still hold back things about myself. It seems like I'm revealing a secret identity when people find out I do X, then Y and Z on the side. I sell myself short constantly and might be left out because of it. Story 8. Got offered an internal promotion for double salary job as a JavaScript developer. I was PHP mainly at time, at UK FTSE 100 company, and declined because I was humble about my skills, didn't want to cause issues. Now I'm 8 years wiser and realize no one knows what they're doing, and I would have been fine with 20 hours on Udemy. Story 9. Quit a job I was comfortable in for more money. You know how everyone is saying the way to climb up the ladder and make more money is to job hop every 2 years or whatever? Don't rush to do that. Doesn't work for everybody. I had a good salary and liked my job and my boss. But there were some issues. Didn't like the coworker I closely worked with, and I wanted more money. So I interviewed, asked for money than they were offering, because hey, what do I have to lose? I already have a good job. And they agreed, offered me more money than I've ever seen. Perfect. Not. The new manager was borderline abusive, and I left after 3 weeks. First time in my life I didn't give a notice because I couldn't handle another day with him. Then I got hit with the absolute worst period of my life, and that's really saying something. Being unemployed didn't help, and my mental health took a deep dive. Things were getting worse and worse in my personal life, but I did get another job through a friend, making even more money. However, she oversold me to them, and them to me, and to say it wasn't a fit would be a grand understatement. Super long story made somewhat shorter. I wanted more money and ended up being unemployed on and off for the next 3 years. I love where I am now, but I'm getting paid a fraction of what I made at that first job I quit. Story 10. Deciding to have an abortion for the wrong reasons. I do not regret the abortion, but I hold a lot of resentment about how it happened. I panicked as a teenager, rushed my ex through it, didn't even give him a chance to talk to me because I was so horrified at being talked about within my family and my relatives, judging me and being the first to not only have a child outside of marriage, but teen pregnancy was unfathomable to me. I am 28 now, and them relatives are not a factor in my life, and I'm very bitter about how I rushed myself and my ex, and basically trauma blocked it out my head because of the opinion of those who didn't matter. The only opinions that mattered were mine and my partner's, and I didn't think about either. My ex suffered a lot with him mental health afterwards, not because he wanted to keep the baby, but how rushed, manic, and honestly just selfish I was during it. Story 11. I killed 38 chickens by pure mistake. I was 10 and wanted to let my parents know how many chickens we had, so I started placing them in a barrel as I counted them. At some point, I noticed it was way quieter and dumped the barrel over to see what was going on. I didn't understand at the time that stacking things in an enclosed space creates a breathing issue. So now we had all these dead chickens, including our beloved Birdzilla, inner intimate, I believe. After attempting chicken CPR, which obviously didn't work, I came into my house bawling that I was a chicken murdered and needed to go to jail. Once my parents fully understood what was going on, they laughed so damn hard and said my punishment was to bury the chickens, and I was punishing myself hard enough, and my dad explained how O2 worked. Story 12. I threw a bowl of mac and cheese at my sister, thought I was above the law and got arrested in the end. No physical violence occurred. No, I didn't run. I admit I should have been the bigger person and walked away. I was making lunch for my son me F19 at the time and my son being 8 mo. My sister was 17, had some bad blood with me at the time, and was striking an argument with me about something stupid again. But what got me was when she said, "And another thing, that fatherless son of yours will turn up to be a little criminal just like UK." At that point my head snapped, and I picked up the closest object, that being the plastic bowl of mac and cheese she just made, and chucked it at her head. It hit, and she started crying. No serious burns, but my mom called the cops, and me being too angry didn't leave, and thought I was above the law in this situation. Needless to say, that's the first and last time I don't run from the cops when given the chance. A 30 mining chance. Story 13. Not watching a movie with my dad before he died from cancer. My dad was months into his chemo treatments at this point, and he just asked me one day if I wanted to watch some old movies with him for a bit. I declined and said I needed to work on school stuff. I was living at home at the time, and I was taking about 15 hours of classes, so I was generally busy, but not then. It tore me apart to see my dad that way. The drugs had been rough on him, and it pained me to see him like that. My dad passed maybe a month or two later, and it is still to this day my biggest regret. We both loved movies, and I would give anything to go back and watch anything with him. I still randomly have moments of despair thinking about it, and I know he would not want me to continue beating myself up, but it's hard. Don't have regrets like me. Spend those precious moments with your loved ones. Story 14. Story 15. Story 16. I tried to prank my school by placing milk in the ceiling of each room. Well, I got most of them, but I made one mistake. Our school already had leaking issues due to an excess amount of snow that would occur every year. It was the Midwest, so I think you get the idea. The many janitors would occasionally check spots where mold was spotted, or it had the occasional leak. It so happens that the milk carton had somehow broke from the milk expanding with how hot it was up there. This I learned in science class, and that would explain things later. Some janitors either had rotten milk spilt all over them, or it made a huge mess on the floor. I was really trying to just make a bad smell. That worked, but it also resulted in either exploding milk or just spilt milk. I was never caught, but I felt guilty. Story 17. I made many mistakes growing up, but here's one that stands out the most. In early high school, I hurt people emotionally through targeted bullying and social exclusion. I was picked on for many years prior to this, so it was mostly redirected anger. I hated the world and most of the people around me. However, this changed during the later years of high school, and I started accepting people and vice versa. I'm not sure how this came about. I'm in my 30s now and a completely different person. I get emotional thinking of all the times I've made people's lives hell for no reason, and it's hard to forgive myself for it. If you are going or went through a tough time in school as a result of bullying, I'd like to apologize on behalf of the bullies. Most of them will certainly regret it at some point. Story 18. Spending 11 years in retail. Seemed like a great idea at the time, better and less toxic than my previous seasonal job. I was dumb and believed that giving it my all and being devoted to the company would take me places. Got passed over for numerous promotions. Got screwed over by friends who didn't care who they had to step on to get themselves ahead, and ended up getting fired on a technicality over a decade in because a coworker was gunning for my job. In retrospect, it was the best thing that ever happened to me work-wise. I had been stuck in a rut, and my self-esteem had been so beat down, I was convinced I didn't deserve better. Thank goodness I ended up in a job I love with great people. I just regret the time wasted. Story 19. Story 20. Trust the wrong people. Open up to them in my most miserable moment and get absolutely crushed by them. Run away from romantic relationships and hurt the most important person in my life by doing it. Do stupid things while trying to convince everyone I didn't want any kind of romantic relationship ever. Watch as I absolutely demolish the one person I actually loved. Realize no matter how hard I try, I can't delete my own feelings, and now I've done terrible things trying to do so. All because of fear, and now I have to live with the consequences of my actions. I will never be able to forgive myself. Sometimes I wish I wasn't even born. But I guess that's the one thing that isn't my fault. Story 21. At 16, thinking I was cool because a 28-year-old was interested in me. Boys, that led down 2 decades of horrible decisions, all because he pumped me with booze. Then, that turned me into an alcoholic who never wanted to face the horrible things guys had done to me. When I did sober up, it was over 6 months of battling with depression due to my mind actually remembering everything that happened. Almost started drinking again to just go back to my medicated state. Once I started swimming, things slowly got better and I changed my whole life around. Met the man of my dreams and we're moving in together in our new house in 2 days. Story 22. When I was a kid, we used to ride our bikes to the top of a hill and pedal as fast as we could, down to the beginning of a sidewalk that was pushed up by tree roots, and we would hit super sick jumps off them. No helmet. My bike's front wheel and handlebars became loose from the abuse, and when I landed, my handles were straight, but the wheel sent me right into a tree. Went over the handlebars head first and hit the tree. Knocked out cold. From what people tell me, my personality changed, as did my penmanship grades and everything. Story 23. Took an antibiotic for a possible infection. I never had to begin with that the doctor gave me. Didn't realize the medication was banned in certain countries and has a black box warning. Doc called a week later after I had taken it for 6 days and says I actually didn't have an infection. Antibiotics were never necessary. I now am disabled and have full-body neuropathy from it, among other things, at 25 years old. It affects my vision, bladder, muscles, walking, etc. Nerve damage all over. Had this for 2 years now. Life is a struggle, unfortunately. Story 24. Sought mental help. 200B. I got depressed because my operation was postponed time and again. Felt suicidal and was admitted into a psych ward. Pumped full of antidepressants that had a side effect of making the operation harder to get. BMI limits. Doctor who never saw me, never talked to me, never saw or talked to my primary doctor, decided that because I was so afraid of the operation being canceled, the only possible way to proceed was to cancel said operation. 200B. So, my plea for help and seeking mental help resulted in the destruction of my life. Story 25. Dating a girl who can do everything and anything to get attention, just because of a bet. Second worst mistake is keeping her in my life because she told me she'd keys if I left. She ended up too attached to me and went from a cheerful, normal girl to someone who fantasies about killing people. She used to follow my friends on the street and threaten them because she was jealous they got to be my friends. Surprise ending, she turned everyone against me, and now knows enough about me to get me killed. Story 26. Private student loans. From a predatory lender before I refinanced, my interest rate was 15%, and I was paying $900 a month in interest. They'd bounce my payments for no reason with no explanation, and charge me a 10% late fee on top of what I owed. They did this almost every month without fail. I paid about $20,000 before they let me drop my cosigners and get a refi. Of that $20,000, maybe only $1,800, $2,000 actually went to the principal. Story 28. Story 29. I skipped a class for organic chemistry in college before finals. Didn't get the memo that final exams would be given in a different room. Showed up 45 minutes late, and my professor wouldn't let me in. I failed the class and nearly failed out of college that semester. I was on academic probation after that. Story 30. Going to a non-denominational church, born-again church. I spent 10 years of my youth in that place. I built my belief system from them, but I doubted my faith because of them too. Pretty much all my life secrets were known by them. Turns out they will use every single one of them against you once you leave. Story 31. Told my mom my brother was doing blues. I know it's not totally my fault, but we had a great relationship, and I'd never ratted on him for anything before then. I just didn't want him to die. That choice led to a 4-month snowball effect where everything fell apart, and he died from an accidental OD anyway. Not sure if it would have changed anything, but I'm keeping to my damn self for the rest of my dumb life. Story 32. A kind of bad one is probably laughing about that one friend back in, I think, late 2012 who told us about this Bitcoin thing he and his neighbor started doing with 2 PCs they had running at their attic nonstop. None of us understood WTF this was and how there was value in it. To be honest, I still don't get the value part. We lost Konsk to him, but I assume he is now enjoying his early retirement at 30. Story 33. Hitchhiking across the country, from Colorado to Philly to get back with an abusive first love, who shot himself in front of me 3 weeks after I got there. If I'd never gone, he'd be alive. Maybe. I'll always feel guilty for him doing that, no matter what people say. BTW. I was totally unharmed by the 3 truckers that gave me rides across the country. God had his hand over me. I truly believe that. Story 34. Getting a 30-wire mortgage instead of a 15-wire mortgage when we had more than sufficient income to qualify. I didn't even know 15 or 20 wire was available, and banker didn't tell us. Sold house after 15 years, had $60K balance instead of $0. I'm still mad at the banker. Definitely our biggest financial mistake. P.S. Yes, I started paying extra on balance at about year 10, but the damage was done. Story 35. Doing freelance work for a friend and getting fired from my job because of it. I ended up applying at a multitude of other jobs that same day, got a call back from a job the next day, scheduled an interview for that day, and got the job that day. I was scared crapless, obviously, from getting fired, but after that I had ended up with a much higher paying job within 24 hours. Story 36. Date my ex. The second he came into my life, I went on a huge downward spiral. Ruined my car, my credit, lost friends, isolated from family, lost almost everything I owned, and was both emotionally and physically abused. All because I desperately wanted love. It's been 6 years, and I've drastically improved myself, my life, and I'm in a happy, loving relationship. But I'll always have the memories of letting myself go through that. Story 37. It's illegal. That's all I can say. A big not illegal one, not taking care of myself. I have struggled with self-destructive behaviors and self-neglect for a long time. It got bad. I went many years without taking care of some serious health stuff. I think anxiety. Mental health played a role as well. Now I will most likely see an early grave, not live to be very old, partially due to my inaction. Story 38. Tried harder and harder to be loved by my parents, eventually had to give up. So completely on my own now. Telling others is usually a mistake too, as they don't get it, and I'd have to expose a lot of abuse for them to understand. So it just looks like I'm a whiny person to them versus a child that was abused heavily, raped at 9, and was just blamed for everything. Story 39. Kinda regret switching my major from bio to business. I changed because I was doing horrible in the classes, mental health reasons mainly, though I found them much more interesting than my business classes. Had a whole plan and a career picked out, but I just couldn't do the work. I'm starting to think I'll never get a hold on my depression at this point, and I don't know what to do. Story 40. Stock market. Lost like 40 KOs in 2021 winter crash and really stresses me TF out every time I think about it. Could have paid my house off by now, but instead put me a few years behind schedule, and now bills are piling up. Next big expense is $10K HVAC replacement. AC blew out just in time for the heat wave. Story 41. Not turning in a white gangbanger, who threatened me if I talked, because he beat a 17-18-year-old kid up within an inch of his life, to the police. He hung himself years later, but it wasn't much consolation. The kid is okay. I don't think my best friend at the time, who was the kid's friend, ever forgave me for not testifying. And she would be right. Story 42. Don't remain silent if you've been through something seriously harming for no one's peace but yours, 'cause you'll end up hating yourself for not standing up for yourself. Don't ignore you. Gut feeling ever. In another word, don't ignore the feeling that refers. That there is something wrong, even if you couldn't prove or know exactly what is it, will save you so much time of your life. Story 43. I sold my magic. The Gathering collection after a breakup in 2005. I needed the money to reestablish myself and start my life over. I got $3,500 for a collection that would be worth $200,000 today. I started playing again in 2010, paying inflated prices for the cards I previously owned. In 2011, I reconnected with the woman I was with. We're married now. Story 44. Just cost our business about $40K plus in the last 3 months. I stupidly had our Google business account suspended BC. We were not the owners. I submitted supporting do ejaculate or cum, seminence. They requested that I was the owner only to realize I submitted it using the wrong email account. Took me 3 months to catch it after work, significantly slowed down, then stopped altogether. Oops. Story 45. Picking on people in high school. I was picked on in elementary and middle school, and as soon as I gained some popularity from being good at sports, I turned into a bully. I did it because I wanted the same people who were mean to me to like me. Every time I think back to those days, I get sick to my stomach. Story 46. Giving my last ex a chance TBH. Made life miserable and stressful, and he was a complete asshole to me. Took a lot to finally break crap off, and I'll never get that time back. Kinda still kick myself for staying so long because warning signs started going off about 2 months into dating, but stayed for a year SMH. Story 47. At this moment, it was a drunk verbal fight with my best friend. Lost her that night and threw away a friendship full of the best memories I have, and also a soulmate. It's been 2 years by now, and after many tries to build trust and friendship again, I finally gave up after a brief conversation with her. Thank you all for watching. Watch even more great stories on my channel.